In this video, we are going to study the third section, which is Archimedes' upthrust force magnitude dependence on the liquid's density. Now, the same egg that was used in the previous part is left freely immersed in fresh water instead of salty water. So what do you observe? Unlike the previous case in the salty water, the egg here sinks down to the bottom instead of floating on the surface of the fresh water. So why? Isn't it subjected to an upward force exerted by the fresh water? Didn't we say in the previous part that every object immersed in a liquid is subjected or is under the effect of an upward force exerted by the liquid? Yes, but there's something different here. So what do you think the difference is? Was the egg at equilibrium once it was left free on the surface of the fresh water? In the previous case, we said that the egg here floating on the surface is at equilibrium. Then the upward force exerted by the liquid is equal in magnitude to the downward force exerted by gravity. However, in this case, the egg was not at equilibrium once it was immersed in the fresh water, since it moved downwards to the bottom until it stopped. So we cannot say, so no, the weight, which is downward force, was greater than the upward force exerted by the liquid. That's why it moved downwards. So we can say that the egg was not at equilibrium once it was placed on the surface of the fresh water. So here are the two experiments that we performed. The control variable in the first experiment was having the same egg, using the same egg in both experiments, experiment 1 and experiment 2. When we say same egg, yani having the same properties of the immersed object, same size, same mass, same volume, same everything. However, the manipulated variable here is the density of liquid. If you still remember in the previous part, we compared the density of the salty water to that of the fresh water, and we said that the salty water is denser than the fresh water. So this was the manipulated variable in the two experiments, experiment 1 and 2, in which in the first one we used salty water, or we immersed the egg in salty water, while in the second experiment we immersed the egg in fresh water. The result was that in the first experiment, the egg floated on the surface. However, in the second experiment, the egg sank down to the bottom. And you know that in any experiment, we always relate the result to the manipulated variable, but not to the controlled variable. So here, having difference in density of liquid and difference in the result, this means that the result is related to the density of liquid. And the flotation of the egg or the sinking of the egg depends on the upward force exerted by the liquid on it. If it was strong enough to oppose the weight, then the object floats. If the upward force, however, if the upward force was not strong enough to oppose or to overcome the weight, then the weight lets the object to sink, to move downward to the bottom. So the density of the liquid affects the force exerted by the liquid on the object. So as a conclusion, we say that the upward force exerted by a liquid on an object immersed whether partially or totally, and whether part of it is under the water or under the liquid or totally under the liquid. This upward force, the magnitude of this upward force depends on the density of the liquid. The object either sinks or floats. This upward force is called Archimedes upthrust due to the scientist who found it, or another name for it is the buoyant force. Question: why is it easier to float on the surface of salty sea water than in fresh water of a pool? Give yourself some time to answer the question. So here in figure 1 we can see people floating easily on the Dead Sea surface.